So welcome everyone. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today for another review of the future of mass notification. My name is Bill Parsons. I'm with New Era Technology. We're a leading AV systems integrator specializing in collaboration and life safety. Joining me today is Rick Wagner from LSI, Layered Solutions Incorporated. They're one of our top technology partners who's going to be leading the presentation today. So there's been lots happened over the past year as far as the way our students and faculty have been interacting. Now that it's somewhat back to normal, what's going to happen? After a year in some cases of online schooling and remote classes, how are students going to deal with the everyday face-to-face interaction? Schools are already seeing an uptick in student behavioral issues, more threats, more fights, increased cyberbullying, and just a mounting pressure overall. The ultimate goal, of course, is to identify any issues and de-escalate them before they turn into a true threat. But what happens if they do? If the need to lock down, evacuate, or shelter in place arises, not just from the threat of violence, but how about even a fire, tornado, or other natural disaster? How do you get the message out, and how do you do it quickly? Let's start by painting a little scenario for you and have you imagine an integrated mass notification solution to help protect your facility and occupants by delivering messages in real time during a crisis using technology you may already have in place. Imagine quickly and easily sending those urgent alerts and notifications to multiple individuals across multiple platforms over your entire facility and campus, even district. Now imagine the unimaginable. That threat, a fire, severe weather outbreak, security breach, or God forbid, an active shooter situation on your campus. How certain are you that the students, faculty, and guests under your care are going to be alerted or notified and know exactly what to do right when they need to? That's a serious question. So before you answer, let's take a look at some staggering statistics. Since 2001, over the past 10 years, according to the FBI database, there's been 184 school shootings. 2021 already has 7, one in Indiana last month. The past full school year across the nation, there's been 6,200 school lockdowns due to a direct threat or active threat, whether it be a shooter with a knife, gun reports, large fights, bomb scares, etc. 4.1 million students were affected. In Ohio alone, again, the last full school year, there were 11 severe weather outbreaks, including incidents of multiple tornadoes with loss of life and property, and 97 school lockdowns reported. That's just the ones that are reported. How about this? 3,320 structure fires in schools average each year. Here's the reality. Crises like these strike your schools every day. So if and when they do occur, the right mass notification solution is crucial. Every second counts. The faster people alerted, the faster they can respond. So getting it right during an emergency doesn't just make your campus safer, it can literally save lives. Here's another staggering statistic. According to a Gartner Security and Risk Management survey, only 37% of respondents indicated that they had a full implementation of emergency mass notification system solution set up in their facilities. 37%, that's vulnerability. Here at New Era, along with LSI, we believe that safety of your students, faculty, and guests shouldn't just be top of mind or a goal, but an achievable priority. The good news is that you may already have much of the systems and technology in place. The key is to embrace it and integrate those systems and technology that's going to give yourself the platform to provide a safer and more secure environment for everyone under your care. We are committed to helping you provide that safer and more secure campus. Schools should be among the safest places for our children. However, the truth and reality of it all is that threats like these strike schools like you every day. The goal of the webinar today is to help you see that a best case safety and alert scenario is achievable, but that starts by helping you evaluate where you are today and helping you guide you to where you need to be tomorrow. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that today. I already made some basic introductions, but we're going to go over those here in just a second. Then we're going to get into the meat of it, which is talking about school lockdowns, the problems with initiating, the time it takes to initiate critical lockdowns. We're going to look at a solution from LSI. We're going to give some real life examples, real life scenarios, and then Rick's going to be provide a demo of exactly what that system can do. Then we're going to open up to some Q&A. Feel free to use the chat window, and we'll be able to address those questions at the end. Again, I made my introduction. My name is Bill Parsons with New Era Technology. Rick, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce Layered Solutions and what you're bringing to the table as far as today's presentation.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Bill. My name is Rick Wagner. I'm with Layered Solutions here. I've been with Layered Solutions for nearly 3 years. Was providing Layered Solutions to school districts in the state of Indiana prior to joining Layered Solutions. So fell in love with the product, fell in love with what it can do, and you'll see some big advantages of what we provide that really helped me align with the mindset of what we're doing here at Layered Solutions. So I'll make as Bill stated, I will run through some of the obstacles that we see on a daily basis, and then how we help resolve that, and then give you a quick little demonstration, and of course, be able to answer any and all questions at the end.
Great. All right, before we get started, I want to open this up for a little poll. I know we've got some schools on here, and we've got some organizations, some corporations as well. So feel free to participate in this. So has your school faced any lockdowns or threats in the past school year? If we want to go back, I mean, since last year was a little interrupted as far as time spent in school. So let's go back for the past 2 years and ask, please, has your school faced any lockdowns or threats in the past year? And if so, how many? We'll take a little minute to calculate these. So
yeah, Bill, it's always an interesting time hearing my son, who's in first grade, well, he'll be in second grade now, coming home from school and acknowledging that they had a lockdown at school. So it's way more common than I would have ever thought, not having kids in school prior to the past couple of years. So I'm interested to see some of these answers here.
So it looks like the majority of people are answering 1 to 2.
Yep.
Which is, that's still scary.
And Bill, something to consider there is, you know, from our school that we're in, the school district here that we are within, they do acknowledge it every time there's a lockdown. I know there are some school districts out there that don't publicly announce that necessarily. So either it's a training, tutorial, those types of things, and they don't need to announce it, or other, but 1 to 2 sounds about appropriate. I'd be curious if there might be more happening consistently.
Right. Yeah. All right, Rick, why don't you go ahead and get started? I'm going to put myself on mute so I can limit the sound.
Sounds
Again,
great.
Questions, please feel free to type them in and we can address those at the end.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate all the information and the introduction. As you saw with Bill's overview of lockdowns or really any type of emergency events, there are obstacles in play. There are things happening that we're not accounting for. There are events happening that we are not prepared for. So I'm going to take a little bit of a step back and look at some of those things that are occurring. One, of course, is simply that the right systems aren't in place. But I don't always like falling back into, you know, one system will solve anything and everything, because in all honesty, that's not going to be the case. And that's why we've taken our layered approach, layered solutions. So we try to accommodate as many different scenarios as possible. So one of the biggest factors in terms of a lockdown or any other type of emergency event is the variables that come into play. As we all know, there are multiple types of events that would warrant a lockdown scenario. Each school might be different, but there's going to be different types of events that do warrant that official lockdown scenario. And if you think through those different scenarios, you're going to run into different variables based on the event itself. But then think about what employees have access to officially warrant that, to officially trigger that, to push that out. Who has access to those systems, to the location that they need to be, to the just the privilege to be able to initially trigger that lockdown. So think about those different types of scenarios, and then also think about where that person physically is. So there's variables within each of those different types of settings. Variable that could be something as simple as the physical location that you need to trigger a lockdown is nowhere near you. So a lot of times there's a panic button in certain locations that triggers a lockdown. If you're not near that panic button, you have to then take an additional step. You have to call, you have to communicate, you have to run, you have to, whatever that next step is, you have to take that extra step. Of course, as Bill noted, extra steps take extra time, and in these types of emergency scenarios, you have to take away as many steps as possible to decrease as much time as possible. You also think about the other type of variables that might come into play. So if you have a mobile app, which Layered Solutions does, we do have a mobile app that can be utilized to trigger different types of events like a lockdown. If you have a mobile app, maybe you don't have cell service in certain areas. Maybe you don't have Wi-Fi coverage in certain areas. Maybe you have integration into a paging system, or your protocol calls for you to do a page over the paging system. And maybe you don't have speakers in certain areas. So maybe the communication, the proper communication, does not get to everyone. There are all kinds of different variables that come into play. And if you truly look at your protocol for a lockdown, you'll, one, see that you do have many technology-based steps. And two, you're going to be able to find holes in that protocol. There's going to be gaps somewhere that you either aren't communicating or aren't providing the ability to communicate in certain areas, or aren't providing the right information, or simply aren't providing the means to trigger or start the lockdown scenario. And again, wasting time to be able to go physically somewhere else to initiate a lockdown. So think through those scenarios. Think through a great tool that we use here at Layered Solutions anytime we're talking to a customer is just simply jotting down those steps. Most of the time when we are talking to a school district anywhere across the country, we see 5, 6, 7, 8 steps. That's kind of the meat of where we see from a technology-based standpoint. What we want to do, and what you'll see here on the next slide, is an example of what those steps could look like. We want to decrease as many of those steps as we want to decrease as much as possible those steps in that process, and expedite that whole entire process so that you can physically go to the location that you need to go to. Of course, technology is not going to physically take you anywhere, so you still have those physical steps in your protocol. And then if you have the ability during drills or any other type of run through, even just talking through the scenario, really lay out the time. A lot of times it will take a lot longer than expected. Again, bringing those variables into play, and fully understand the variables that you'll be presented with, and add those to the time, or consider those in different unique scenarios for timing purposes. And then look at, does everybody get the information? Does everybody get the right information? So again, whether there's gaps in technology that you don't have, somebody didn't have their cell phone with them, somebody didn't have their two-way radio with them, somebody is in an area that does not have speakers or for your paging intercom system, or they simply don't work in that space. Maybe you're hosting an athletic event and you have a gym full of visitors, and none of them have the mobile app, your mass notification mobile app, because they shouldn't. So you need to make sure that you have the necessary visual and audible communication. Of course, in that type of setting, you're not going to necessarily be able to hear the audible communication in an emergency. So you want to ensure that you have the visual as backup, or some kind of cue, visual cue as well, that you can add to that to give the visual steps. And again, if looking to make sure everybody gets enough information. Are all of your lockdown procedures the same, or do you have a weather emergency versus a lockdown emergency, or a lock-in emergency? You want to look at those different steps and make sure that people have enough information to truly know what to do next. One of the things that you'll see here from a demonstration perspective is when we initiate a lockdown through our system, it's modular, so you can build it to fit your specific needs. But one of the things we do to show is actually send out a document that shows your steps that you take. So it simply says lockdown, so very clear, concise communication, and then shows the next 3 or 4 steps that you have to take from a physical standpoint. So we try to expedite and condense all of the technology-based steps, and then we simply provide you with the necessary steps so that you have enough information to know what to do next. So just an example, these are steps that we see all the time, even with schools that initially provide us feedback that they are well prepared. And there are many schools, don't get me wrong, there are many schools that take great precaution in any type of emergency event. They have great tools in place. So there certainly are schools out there that are doing a great job, or at the very least doing as much as they can. Of course, resources aren't everywhere, so you do have to do as much as you can with what you have. But what we do see with most of the schools is some kind of collection of 5, 6, 7, 8 steps in an emergency. Again, these are technology-based steps. So a few examples of these are making a page over your PA intercom system. A lot of times that involves physically going to a specific location so that you can actually make a page over your paging system. Of course, there's inconvenient components to that. In some of the schools that we work with, actually, during a lockdown, they call down to the front office or wherever the administrative phone, the main microphone is, to your paging system, and alerts that person to actually make a page. So there's obstacles, there's variables there that come into place that, of course, decrease or increase the time in that emergency that you're getting to complete those technology-based steps. The other factor in that is the live page that employees are expected to make over a paging system. There are all kinds of factors involved in that. We see studies kind of all over the place, and a lot of the variables there are if it's truly a lockdown, if God forbid an active shooter, some other emergency type of event, that person most likely is their adrenaline is going to be going, they're going to be nervous, they're going to be anxious, and presenting that audibly to the rest of the school can cause additional anxiety and increase the tension throughout the school. So something that we can do is automate a pre-configured message. It can be a recorded message that you take from somewhere online. It can be a recorded message from a school principal or assistant principal or a superintendent. That we always suggest because it's a calm, recorded voice of a voice that's familiar. So you want to try to keep people calm. You want to help them remember what the steps are in these events. And those are some of those the features that we really push to try to make it as simple as possible. There are times where we hear schools have somewhat of a phone tree in order to alert the right personnel, but also get the right privileges, the right approval to physically go into a lockdown. Of course, any type of manual process like that increases time in those types of scenarios. Then in a true lockdown, when you're physically putting your building into a lockdown, a lot of times you have to go to a physical location to put your school into a lockdown. Now there's a lot of access control systems that have mobile apps and have access over a web browser, so it's getting much more convenient to do so. However, it's still, even if you do have the mobile app, even if you do have the ability to lock down from the mobile app or web interface, you still have that step to go to that other software interface. And although that's probably seconds, those seconds we can condense down through our system so that it truly is fully automated. Utilizing two-way radios, that's very prevalent in schools still. Of course, like I had mentioned earlier, cell phone coverage, Wi-Fi coverage, sometimes there's gaps. Two-way radios are still a great tool that necessary communication can occur over those devices. And again, that's just another tool that we can step on top of, and we can automate that message that goes out to those devices. A lot of times there's emails and texts being sent out. It could be through your existing communication platform to engage the community with snow delays or different types of announcements of events that are occurring. So that's, again, another platform you have to go to send out the communication in those to the mass communication, to the mass community of those events. In terms of monitoring events, of course, there's certain people that are going to want to and need to know what's going on in those emergencies. So going to your camera system, going to your VMS system, your video management system, and monitoring what's going on. That's, again, jumping to another platform, pulling up the cameras, trying to figure out where the event is occurring, jumping around to different cameras. We can take care of a lot of that. And I'll show you some of that during the demonstration component of that. Alerting authorities. I'll give you a great example of a school district that we are working with, that we actually provide our computer alert pop-up, which we call PC Alert, to the local dispatch centers. So as soon as there is a life-threatening event, the local dispatch center gets that pop-up on their dispatch computers. And before calls even come in, they have already dispatched law enforcement officials to go to that physical school location. And then, of course, calls still come in, and you are able to provide even more information. But again, that's another step in the process that we typically hear. And then, of course, like I mentioned, physically going to a location after you complete your technology-based steps, or if you're a teacher in the classroom, or you're in another location, and you don't have any technology-based steps, you just simply have the step of getting to a corner or going into your desk or whatever, you're going to a closet, whatever your protocol may be. And of course, having the ability to clear. This is actually more of an issue than we hear. That this is more of an issue than I had ever thought. Prior to joining Layered Solutions, I had not understood the potential harm of just clearing an event. There's all types of different situations that could come up that you're in a classroom and you don't know if the lockdown has been cleared. You don't know if an active shooter scenario has been cleared. You don't know whether to leave your classroom. So we can help provide additional methods of communication in those events so that you can continue to communicate with your staff, with your students, with everybody, and even visitors within your building. So look at your own unique situation. You probably have some of these steps. You may have more. There probably are more. Each individual school is different in terms of what their protocol looks like. But look at every single technology-based step and list them out, and you'll see if you list them out, the more you have, the more time that you're taking to be able to go through the entirety of the process. So with Layered Solutions, that process would simply be initiate the lockdown. So I said it very simply there in the slide because we can do that so many different methods. We talked about the variables of how do you initiate, how do you start, how do you trigger a lockdown. We can give you many different methods, many different spots, physical locations, different tools to initiate. That can be a mobile app, that can be a web interface, that can be an extension on your phone system, that can be panic buttons spread out throughout, that can be a desktop icon on every teacher's computer. We have all different methods of initiating a lockdown, and once that lockdown is initiated, all the communication and all the data, the correct data, is getting to the right people. With Layered Solutions, we take a very modular approach. We take a very agnostic approach. So we sit on almost just about every time we sit on your existing technology that's already in place. So instead of replacing some hardware that's in place that works perfectly, let's work with what you have, and let's just sit on top of a lot of those systems and automate the process throughout an entire lockdown scenario. And then, of course, you're still physically going to the location per your protocol. So we can automate the entire process from a technology-based perspective, and decrease that to one step, even fully automated in some scenarios, tying into other systems. But then you have the opportunity to physically get to your location way quicker than you would in other types of setups. So a lot of information on here, but the two items here are simply quotes from a school that we work with. First scenario that I'll give an example. And this is where we have our PC alert to all dispatch computers. So this is 23 schools in a district. They have multiple functions within their system, but the premise of what their layered solution system is built on is a panic button. And a panic button is located at the front desk area. They have other methods of triggering this, of course, but the physical panic button is at the front desk location. That is for a life-threatening emergency only. When that event occurs, a computer pop-up alert is sent to the local dispatch. The local dispatch receives the name of the school, the address, and that a life-threatening event is occurring. So they get the fully automated communication. They already know what's going on. They send dispatch there within seconds. And then we also have a connection to their paging system. So we have a recorded familiar voice we're pushing that audio into their paging system. So again, technology they already had, we're just tying into it and pushing that automated communication. Mobile app, they have the Layered Solutions mobile app. So everyone that has a mobile app receives notification that there's a life-threatening event, and it can include instructions as well, and that's the case here. Then they also have a designated safety team at each school. That designated safety team receives unique messages, and of course we can do that in any scenario. We can offer unique messages to different groups, and this is what we're doing here with the safety team. The safety team receives notification that a life-threatening event is occurring, and on their mobile device they open up that notification, and there's a pop-up that simply says call 911. All they have to do is click that, and they are automatically calling 911 directly. So 911 already, the local dispatch, they already know what's going on. They already know there's an emergency happening at that school, and there's already law enforcement officials going to that location based off of the PC alert pop-up that is occurring at their dispatch center computers. However, this allows for expedited communication with dispatch and allows for more expansive conversation of what exactly is going on at that event. One scenario that actually just happened recently, someone actually initiated a panic button by accident. So everything happened as it was supposed to. Law enforcement officials actually came to the school, and before the principal could actually call law enforcement to tell them that it was an error and it was a false alarm, there were already law enforcement officials at the school. So you can just see how quickly that happened. Everything occurred. The principal then had to quickly go confirm whether this is a true life-threatening event or not, but all the communication had already happened. And then once they realized that it truly was a false alarm, there were already law enforcement officials at that physical location. And then we also have PC alert to the staff members as well. So the communication goes to all the computers in addition to the mobile app notification and the paging system integration. So just one example. Again, we do work all across the country. There's dozens here in central Indiana, in the Indiana, Ohio area that we've worked with specifically. Another quick little example, and this is a quote from the customer, just the process that they were going through, all kind of variables, user errors, all these different types of people freezing, and that's where I had mentioned the anxiety, the nervousness, the heightened stress of those situations, and that's exactly what he describes here. Their previous process was three in a way, 3 steps, but all kinds of holes all over the place. So call over two-way radio, personnel receives the call, and then they dial up, they go to the PA system. So there's a physical location to do a live announcement. Again, all types of variables there that can come into play. And then at that point, he said his quote was, "At this point, we'd hope that everyone was able to hear the alarm." So obviously he knew there was issues. He knows there were vulnerabilities, and that's why he sought out a system like ours and eventually landed with layered solutions. So what we did, we came in, triggering events, again, multiple ways to actually trigger the event via mobile app, web interface, phone, other methods, and then automatically sending communication out. So sending communication out to PC Alert, mobile app, paging systems. They even have LED marquee signage within their facility to have the visual communication as well, and many other methods as well. And here's just a nice quote from him, kind of describing what layered solutions did to them from a security standpoint, from a comfort standpoint, and really his quote right here: the only thing the user needs to do now is press a button. So there's a lot of comfort in knowing that it's just one-step process. You don't have to remember a long list of different tasks to do in those emergency events. Like I'd mentioned, New Era is a partner of ours, obviously, and we've teamed up with New Era on dozens of layered solutions systems here in Central Indiana alone. We have customers all across the country. K through 12 and higher ed are the largest area of business that we have our system in. But certainly many other scenarios as well, including healthcare, commercial, industrial, and whatnot. But New Era has found a groove, and we have a lot of reference points here around the state of Indiana and in Ohio as well that we can point you to. And like I had mentioned, each one is different. We're modular. We build our system on your specific needs and not try to fit your needs into what we already have. So very modular, and we can come up with a situation that's unique to you, or at the very least walk you through a system that would be unique to you and what that could look like. So all this might sound great, but of course the question always comes, how much? So there's a couple of things I wanted to highlight with that question. Using your existing technology, that's something that we take a lot of pride in. Layered solutions steers clear from proprietary devices as much as humanly possible. So we steer clear of that because that just adds dollars and forces our customers into a corner in the route that they go. So what we do and what we've done with New Era is we can provide a free consultation of what you have in place, what your steps are, and then how we can layer it on top of that, how we can layer layered solutions on top of that, your existing technology, to really expedite that communication. And again, we have a very modular approach. So you buy just the functions that you need. You don't have to buy an enterprise license, an enterprise setup of our system, and then you're only going to use 10-15% of it. You buy just the components of our system, and then you always have the opportunity to grow the system into different features or functions, but that's never a requirement. Most of our system is a one-time cost. You buy it, you own it. We have what we call a software support agreement, and that is standard with most software systems, which is what we are. But it is simply to get these software updates and service coverage as you need it. So if that's something as simple as a yearly training session to your staff in order to know how to use it, that covers those types of events. But any type of updates within our software, that covers that, of course, as well. And we do actually have a major software release that will either be the end of this year or beginning of next year that will come out, completely revamping our user interface to make it even more user-friendly to our customers. So I've highlighted a lot of this through our conversation, but quickly just hitting on a few areas. We do have a lot of systems that we integrate into that simply aren't here, but just to give you an idea of what this can look like, our integrations include systems like shot detection systems, camera systems, fire alarm systems, two-way radio, access control, third-party conferencing systems, different types of computer platforms, operating system platforms to have our PC Alert pop up, different mobile devices that we can tie into as well, different paging systems, that we can tie into different intercom paging systems and even IP speakers directly as well. And there's all kinds of flexibility when it comes to paging and intercom systems. So we can certainly dive into that deeper if that's an area of interest for your specific school. We also have tie-ins to phones as well. So your landline phones, if you will, your phones within your school district, we can tie into that both from a initiating standpoint, a trigger standpoint, but also paging to those devices as well. So there's certain manufacturers we work with that we can actually have a visual text message up on the screen, the small little screen you may have on your phone. But then we can also utilize the phone as a paging endpoint as well in a lot of different circumstances. The mobile app is both an initiator of different types of events, but also a endpoint. So you receive the notification, and then you also are allowed. You also have the ability to notify if you're okay or if you need additional assistance within the mobile app. And I'll show you a quick example of what our mobile app can look like. All kinds of different methods to communicate. Outbound, we tie into social media, we tie into email, texting, pagers, most relevant in healthcare, of course. Two-way radio, mobile, paging system, and then you get into the visual side of things as well. Again, like I mentioned, audible is not the only method that we need to communicate. There's going to be scenarios where you simply don't have you don't have the ability to communicate just by an audible message. So that's where we can tie into your existing digital signage platform or tie into other TVs or displays or classroom technology directly. And we can override that content, and we can actually push the emergency content there as well. Then we also have the ability to tie into all types of different types of LED message boards or clocks. So that a lot of times those are utilized as synchronized clocks as well. And we can push customize emergency messaging to those devices as well. We do also have strobe lighting. Strobe lighting has become pretty helpful in a lot of ways. We have an IP PoE based strobe light. It's RGB, so we can flash specific colors based on specific events. So as you're doing your training, you get accustomed to specific colors mean specific events. We have outdoor versions as well. So having a horn outside is very helpful, but it's not always fully intelligible. So you're not sure exactly what's happening. You hear that something's happening, but you're not sure exactly what's happening. So that's where a visual cue as well is very helpful in those scenarios. Just a brief example of our mobile app. We have the ability to customize each specific user based on their specific needs. So you may have, this is what we utilize a lot of times for teachers. So teachers may have the mobile app, but really they're not using the mobile app for anything other than an emergency or reporting their status. So this gives them the ability to trigger those specific types of events, and these are just examples that can be fully customized to your specific types of events that you come across. And then we have the ability to report you're okay. And what that does is that gives certain administrative right users the ability to view live who has checked in, who has not checked in, who needs additional assistance. And we can actually utilize the GPS of that device if they need further assistance. So that gives you the ability to actually show where an employee is during an emergency. And then you may have certain users that utilize the system in a lot of other ways. Something we haven't really even touched on, but a big emphasis of ours is that we utilize our system in many non-emergency scenarios as well. We have all kinds of different methods to utilize our system. It can be a district-wide page perspective. If you're a superintendent, if you're a principal, if you're somebody who needs the ability to do a district-wide page and you don't want to go through a multi-step process, we can simply include a button on your mobile app or web interface or other method. Click that, and then you have a phone call that comes into your cell phone. You answer it, and you have a live page into your entire district. There are certainly other methods to utilize that kind of functionality, or some small fraction of that type of functionality. But we utilize our system in a lot of non-emergency scenarios as well, and always happy to walk you through that. Bill or any of the other sales reps at New Era that covers your account, we can certainly walk through those scenarios. Then one other item prior to jumping into some demonstration components, a web interface. So a web interface, again, customizable per user, so you have methods of triggering different types of events that are most relevant to you. One other scenario that we've come across that has proven to be quite successful or quite helpful to schools is a desktop icon. So there are instances in which you don't want to give user rights to certain faculty or staff. In those instances, what we can do to still give them access to trigger events is create desktop icons. So what happens there is this weather event is the same as this weather event. It's just the method of which you're going about to trigger that event. So you double click the icon or single click, depending on how you have it set up on your computer, and that triggers the event. So everything else is automated. You move on to whatever your next physical step is. You've done your part to initiate that event. And again, it can be any event. These are just some examples. One scenario that has proven to be very helpful. There are situations that lockdowns result from somebody coming in, a visitor coming in through the entrance, and then becoming hostile to the point that you have to go into a lockdown, whether it's a parent that's having issues in the family and they don't have access to communicate to their kids, or it's a former employee or a former student. You have the ability to set up simple desktop icons, and they simply click that icon to communicate that there's some kind of event happening at the front desk and necessary personnel need to get to that location immediately. Why that's so popular is because you aren't raising a red flag. You aren't igniting the situation at all. You aren't reaching under your desk to try to find a panic button, and the visitor there becomes more hostile because they know exactly what you're doing. You're not doing some discrete, and I'm saying in quotes, quote unquote, discrete page over the paging system that says code whatever. You're not getting up out of your seat to go somewhere else. You're not looking as frightened because you don't know what to do. You simply double click the icon, and that communicates everything, and then you carry on your business with this visitor, and it can hopefully keep the situation nice and calm, or at least not ignite it any further. So, we are opening up another poll in the hope with this poll, and go ahead and answer at your leisure, but the hope with this poll is as we've talked through different scenarios, as we've talked through gaps and variables in place in those emergencies, in a lockdown, in other types of emergencies, we hope that you see the big picture. If the big picture is that you have a great system and you don't have vulnerabilities, that is excellent. But if the big picture that you see, even through this conversation, is that you do have some vulnerabilities, big or small, some vulnerabilities, that's where we want to look at that and come up with some thoughts of where we could go next. And that's where we get a conversation with your local New Era rep, and I can always join as well, and we can run you through scenarios. And again, a free consultation is always available. We can look at what you have currently, we can look at your protocol currently, your steps currently, and we can look at how we can minimize some of those steps, and of course decrease time in those steps as well. So jumping into a quick little demonstration, I am going to exit out of this, and what I am going to do, again, our solution is made for all different types of events, all different types of emergency events, And this is the ability to trigger a lockdown. So I mentioned a lot of different methods of actually triggering the lockdown. We can use our mobile app, we can use the web interface, we can use panic button, we can use automation from another system. Say you have a shot detection system, that can be fully triggered. A sensor goes off, we receive that message, and we automate the complete lockdown altogether. So all different types of methods of initiating that lockdown. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to simply initiate the lockdown. I'm going to simulate that, and you'll see in here a couple items, and I'll recap what's going on as you see it. So there's a couple things to review here. So we have, this is if you see here, I'm gonna if you saw on the screen there, we have LED boards on our demo wall here at our offices. The ability to override those and push whatever type of customized text you want there. For us, we simply put lockdown, and they do have small flashers on them, so we flash those as well, again, to get your attention, so you look at the LED board and know what's going on. There's a couple other things that are happening here. So these two items here are part of our PC Alert functionality. So PC Alert is the ability to pop up notification on all network connected computers. It's two-part, and you can choose either or. You can do both, like I'm doing here. But one method is this scrolling message, again, customized text, and we just simply have it timed out, so that's why you saw it disappear. We can have that go until somebody actually physically clears it as well. But that customized text will scroll across your screen, say what you want about it, and give you necessary information. This is another example, and this is something that would be pretty prevalent when it comes to digital signage. A lot of times we have in schools community spaces, especially during athletic events or other type of events, you have visitors come into your building, and if there is a life-threatening event, you need to be able to communicate with those visitors. So this is a great tool that you can push something like this to digital signage. You alert that something is happening. You tell them exactly what it is, like a lockdown, and you give them the steps necessary. So of course, locking doors, closing blinds, that would be most prevalent in the classroom. But if it's in a community space, we can send a specific set of instructions to go to this room or go to that room. Gives you great flexibility in terms of how you communicate, but what you communicate as well. And then as you see here, use app to report you're okay. So again, that goes back to our mobile app. You're able to report you're okay. The certain administrators are able to view a live view of who's checked in, who has not. And then the ability to actually see the GPS location of the phone when somebody has initiated they need further assistance. Another couple items in addition to this is we can send a command to your access control system to physically go into a lockdown. So again, taking away the need to go into another platform and initiate a lockdown. Vice versa, in addition and vice versa to that, is we can receive information from your access control system. If you already have in place an access control system and you utilize the mobile app to initiate a lockdown, you're comfortable with that, you're happy with the result of that, that's great. We can sit, and again, going back to customizing to your specific needs, we can sit on top of that the other direction and get data from the access control panel when you initiate a lockdown in that system, and then we extend the reach out. So we send the PC alert out, we send a tie-in to your paging system, we send digital signage interruption, we send all those other methods that the access control panel does not. So we can work in both directions. We also have the ability to do two-way radio. My mobile app received an alert that there was a lockdown. So mobile app notifications, paging integration, so you get that page over the paging system. All different types of methods to on the front side initiate a lockdown, but then on the back side to actually receive information on what event is occurring, and allowing the variables that you're inevitably going to have in play, allow the layered solutions system to overcome that and offer more pathways to reach everybody who may be on site with you. Now, very, very briefly, and this is the last item I will touch on, It would be great if this piques an interest. We'd love to give you a further demonstration on this, because there's all different ways that you can utilize this. This is Layered Solutions Visual Campus. So what we do with this, the idea with this is to bring different systems that normally wouldn't work together or communicate together, bring that into one interface and allow you to communicate with a lot of these systems, but also receive a lot more data all in one fell swoop. So one example I'm going to show you very quickly is an access control integration. So you'll see the door is left ajar too long. I'll go ahead and trigger this here so I can explain as we go. Trigger door jar. Okay, so you'll see a couple items here. So you'll hear there's audible messaging coming through PC Alert that can go to your paging system. We have the LED marquee boards on our demo wall scrolling new messages. I'm just sharing the camera feed that we have for that specific location. But then what we did with Visual Campus, so you saw the ways we can communicate. We can get communication out through all different methods, make sure people have the right information. But if you have Visual Campus up in certain areas, maybe a principal's office, or maybe if you have an SRO, their office or their mobile device, you have the ability to gain a ton more data in one of those events. So what's happening here is a trigger at this door. That could be a door left open too long, some kind of event that's set up within your access control system. So that event is occurring. You know exactly what event it is. You know exactly what door it is. And this is where we start tying in other types of systems. So we have camera integration in one fell swoop as well. So you have camera integration. The closest camera pops up to that type of event and shows you what's going on at that location. We can take it a step further. If you have an IP camera, or if you have an IP speaker, even a two-way IP speaker, we can open up the pathway to actually communicate with that vestibule in a live setting. So within seconds, you're on your phone communicating to that person that's holding the door open, and you can quickly clear that up saying they're fine. It's Mr. Smith. He's bringing in tables into the gym, whatever the scenario is. Or you have enough data to go off of that you physically go to that location and you try to resolve it on site. But there's probably a lot of situations you get those events and it's truly not an event. It's just somebody holding the door open and they quickly need to be reminded that they need to close the door. We can do this in terms of connecting different types of technology that normally wouldn't communicate with each other. We can do that all over the place with items such as fire alarm. Fire alarm device goes off. We can pop up the closest camera, show you exactly, or cameras, show you exactly what's going on at that area. If you have a shot detection system, if you have a vape detection system, if you have other type of censored system, glass detection, glass break detection, we can pop up cameras. We can communicate out. We know where those locations are. We can identify them on Visual Campus, and immediately you can see exactly what's going on in that general vicinity and be able to react a lot more efficiently because you have the right data right in front of you. So with all that being said, I have concluded my area. Bill, do you have somewhere you want to go into next?
No, I think we're good. We have a few questions that need to be answered. I know we're coming up on the 1 hour mark, so wanted to make sure we had these questions addressed properly. Looks like some of them were asked and then answered at a later date, but let's see. One of the first questions is, are parents included for notification with the appropriate content?
Great question. So the answer is yes. The big answer, the overall answer is yes, typically. So it also though, so there's a couple avenues to answer that. Each school it's up to them in terms of what they communicate and how they communicate it out to the parents. Certainly, me being a dad, I want to know if there's actually an event at the school. I want to know that information. And our school district does a good job of communicating events like that. Fortunately, we haven't had anything quite that severe. So then you ask, okay, how do you get the communication there? So we can certainly do that. We have methods of updating, very easily, automatically updating databases of the community phone numbers, parents and local community officials, those types of contact numbers. So we have the ability to do that. However, what we find is most of the time schools have communication already in place to cover those types of communications. So snow delay, weather events, gas leak and the school has to close, those types of events typically are already in place because you need to communicate that type of information. Blackboard Connect. I'm trying to think the one my son's school uses, and I'm spacing on it off the top of my head. But what we do a lot of times is actually utilize those existing avenues that are already in place. So instead of recreating a secondary texting system that they receive a text from their LSI system for emergency events, and then they receive a text from another system for events at the school or announcements or weather type of events or bus delay. What we like to do is just simply communicate into that system that's already in place. It saves a lot of dollars to do it that way, and you're not relearning a system that you might be already comfortable with. So you'll see as we dive in more and more into demos and some assessments of current schools. We have methods of trying to utilize the existing technology in place and simply taking advantage of that and adding the additional piece like a lockdown. Maybe there's a lockdown event, instead of creating all that within the communication platform. That's already happening within the Layered Solutions platform. So we just simply poke that communication platform and say, hey, pass this along to your database.
Great. I got time for maybe a few more questions, and this is one that I love it because it's forward thinking. Any consideration to exploring how drones could be utilized in the process?
Great question. We have not done so. Most of the time with our system, we look to integrate with existing technology. So what that means is, I do believe drones are going to be an important part of a lot of things, quite frankly. But when it comes to school safety, or if there's a lockdown event, or if there's an active shooter event, I think we will start to see more drone type solutions. So what that means for us and what we are keeping an eye on is, what are those solutions and how can we leverage that with our system? If we initiate a lockdown or an active shooter, or there's a shot detected, or there's a fire alarm, we have that information. Maybe we can expedite the process to deploy that drone because it's going to be set up by itself on where to go, what to do with that information, and what kind of functionality it provides. So maybe we can expedite that information. Maybe it has a camera on it that we can access the camera feed and spread out that camera feed as well. So we are always keeping an eye on different types of technology, where they're headed. Bill, you had sent me the maybe a couple weeks back, vape detection. That's become very popular. So there's things like that. We're always keeping an eye on what new technology looks like and how we can best leverage that technology, and not try to recreate it, but just leverage it and expedite any type of communication or steps in those emergency events.
All right, one more, and I'm sure everyone wants to hear the answer to this one. Are there any state or local funding sources available that can help defray the cost?
Yes, absolutely. There's funding all over the place. Layered Solutions has been involved in many different grant requests with schools. Certainly not writing the grant, but we can provide any type of data that's needed. We can work with you on wording the solution in the appropriate manner so that it's accurate and well received and clear to the grant writing process. I know New Era has a lot of familiarity with grants and different types of funding sources. So New Era in and of itself can certainly be a great resource as well. Always happy to discuss different areas and different grants that we've been involved with, not directly, but we can certainly sit side by side with you all, with your school, to try to help leverage those funding sources as much as possible and provide necessary feedback or resources from our side to get through the process as quickly as possible.
Great. All right. Again, thank you, Rick, for putting this on. It was very knowledgeable, very helpful. I think we've opened up some scenarios that maybe weren't considered before, as far as how we can eliminate the steps to getting the message out in the event of emergency, or just communication across the board.